Hello friends, welcome back. Hope you're doing well. I'm in Lightroom today and I'm playing with a photo, and I've made a few Lightroom videos in the last, couple of months. I've kind of been diving back into it because it's really come a long way since I used it consistently in the past, which was a couple of years ago. I basically took a couple of years off from Lightroom. Got a lot of catching up to do. One of the really great things about Lightroom that have been added in the last couple of years are all the masking tools. They just have gotten so good and so powerful. So I'm kind of working through some of that. I'm going to do some of that in today's video and show you kind of how I'm using Lightroom now. So let's take a look at it. I've got this photo now. I've obviously cropped it. You can also see that I did a lot of spot removal. You can't tell this is the before, but there's spots everywhere. I hope I got them all. I also cropped and straightened, as I said, and then on the develop or a basic right here in the basic panel, I did some adjustments as well, and I'm going to show you what these all did to the photo in a second. Also did some lens correction and transform. So I did a lot of things to kind of get my canvas the way I wanted my canvas to look, which is often how I start with an edit. I'll do some basic adjustments, and then I may crop and kind of straighten and transform and obviously spot removal, things like that. So what that brought me to was this photo, and this was Big Ben in London. I think that's very obvious. My favorite city and a place that I love to shoot. And what I did here, I went ahead and just had these adjustments ready to go here in the basic section because I'm not going to walk through all of them. You can kind of see what I did, but for me the bottom line is I wanted to take the photo from too blue and too dark. It needed some adjustments to what looks to me a little bit more balanced and kind of, for lack of a better term, flatter, so that I can go in and do my customization. And that's what masking is so good for. And that's why I love the masking tools in Lightroom, because they're really powerful and they're really good, and I've been using them a lot. So I'll be back to explore more of the masking options, but today I'm going to use quite a few on this photo to get me where I want to be. So I've got that photo so far. The next thing I want to do is get into masking. So you just click on this little button, and in this case I'm going to add a sky mask to start with, and boom, it does a great job. Now I will point out that there's a few pieces where it's kind of overlapped, where I think it's probably, let me hide the overlay, probably because the shades are kind of similar, but it hasn't found every single bit of the sky. It's overlapped the building a little bit. So this is where you can just come in and adjust the mask. You can add or subtract, and I'm going to subtract, and then my option here, I got quite a few of them, I'm going to subtract based on the brush. So I'm going to go in here and have to do some erasing. So let me do that, and then we'll jump into the next step. Okay, so I've done a little customization here, a little painting in, a little painting out. I'm going to hide the overlay, and now I'm going to come in and I'm going to start by slightly darkening the sky. What I want to do is create a little bit more mood in the photo. So I'm going to bring the exposure down. I'm going to bring the tint up to about a 25. And all that's going to do is help me kind of tie in the sky with the look of this reflected light in the water. And then I'm also going to use a really cool color tool at the end to kind of bring it all together. Now I'm actually going to add some clarity. I'm going to go about a 22 or 23, so something about like that. And I'm going to add a slight bit of dehaze, maybe like a 14 or something like that. So if you look at the before and after for the sky, before and after, much better look overall and more in line with where I want to be. So I'm pretty happy with that. So that's mask number one. Now I'm going to continue in the masking menu. I'm going to click plus, and this time I'm going to add a linear gradient. And this linear gradient is going to come over here. And I'm going to roll that up to about there, fade it into kind of the edge of the, where the river kind of touches the bank on the other side. But of course, I need to come in and further refine that a little bit. So I'm going to click subtract, and I'm going to get a brush. And this time, I'm going to get a larger brush. And what I want to do is just take it out of here, because what I'm going to do is some things that just wouldn't look good by applying them here to the bridge. Okay, so my mask looks about like that, which I think looks nice. And what I want to do is cool it off just a little bit. So just a minor, like a -7. I'm also going to bring the texture down, like a -52 or 53. And this is really just kind of smoothing out that water a little bit. And I'm also going to reduce clarity. It was about a second long exposure. So not really a long exposure, but I definitely dragged the shutter for a second or so. But even at 1 second wasn't quite smooth enough for me. So having that mask and being able to come in and do that takes it from there to there, makes it a little bit smoother, which I like. And I cooled it off a little bit, which I think is going to tie it into the overall color moves that I end up making on the photo. Now that I've done that, I'm going to click to add a new mask. I'm just going to keep going. And this time it's going to be an object. And what I want to do is come in and I want to get this bridge and I want to make a little bit of customization to it. So I usually just come in and I like to paint around all the areas that I'm going to need. And then I usually come in and just try to fill it in some. You don't have to get every single pixel, but it's, in my opinion, it pays to like tell Lightroom, give Lightroom information. That's basically what I'm doing. And you know what? It did a pretty good job. I'm going to click add and I'm going to get a brush and I'm just going to come in here with a little bit smaller brush and just paint in the rest of that right here so that I can have a complete coverage of my bridge. But you can see even at the top, I mean, it did a great job getting around all that stuff. I think that looks pretty good and that's going to fit with what I want to do, which includes increasing the exposure a little bit. I'm basically brightening the bridge. It's obviously closer, and as a bit of a leading line for me visually, I want it to be a little bit brighter so it kind of leads your eye to Big Ben there at the end, or kind of in the middle, I guess, of the photo. I'm also going to add some texture because I like using the texture slider on things that are like this, that are generally speaking that would maybe have a little bit of crispiness to them, which means I'm also going to use some clarity. So something about like that. And now that area is popping a little bit more, which I like. So if I show you the before and the after, you can see quite a bit more pop there, a little bit more punch. And I like that. And I think it draws my eye pretty nicely. Although I actually think I'm going to pull it down just a little bit. I think I was at about a 35 or 36. I think I'm going to go to about a 30 or so. So 31, I think that looks good. But I just wanted to pop that bridge a little bit, and that's a great way to do that. And in fact, I'm going to experiment with the tint because I didn't do this in my notes, but I might add a little bit of green. Like I don't want to go too green and make it crazy, but a slight bump. Let me reset that to 0. A slight bump, like a -10 or 15, that actually might work. So it is green, so bringing up that color just a little bit. And now that I've done that, I'm going to get another object brush, and this time plus and objects. And what I want to do here is go in and I want to capture Big Ben and the Houses of Parliament that you can see here. And I want to make some adjustments to them as well. Some similar adjustments as what I made on the bridge, but I'm using a different object mask because they're not the same adjustments. And I need these to be a little bit more custom in terms of what I'm trying to do here. So that means a different mask. So let me finish getting this and then we'll jump into the edit. Okay, a little bit of brush work. I've got a pretty decent job there covering up the Houses of Parliament and Big Ben. What I want to do is pop into temperature. I want to warm these up a little bit because they are kind of that orangey kind of color. And I want to amplify that a little bit because this is essentially a blue hour photo, and the warmth of those buildings against the blue hour in the sky and reflected in the water, I think looks nice as a color contrast. And then also we're going to play with color at the end, and I think it's really going to pop the light on the bridge and the reflection, and that warmth will play off the cool pretty nicely. So that's kind of where we're going. I'm also going to add some texture, again, just like I did with the bridge, because it's man-made structure, just kind of looks good if you add a little bit of crunch, and I'm going to add a little bit of clarity as well. So I think that looks pretty nice. Actually might try, let me try maybe a 10 here, just on the warmth. And so if I turn this mask off and show you the before, there you go, a little bit darker, a little bit less crisp, and not as warm. And then I show you the after, you can see it's popping a little bit more, which I like. And so I've now essentially done 4 different masks. I did the sky, I did the water, I did the bridge, and I did the buildings, all with essentially different masking tools and of course different approaches. And now I'm effectively done with my masking. And for me, this is just a wrap-up kind of thing, something I like to do at the end, and that is play with the calibration sliders for color. And for me, I do this at the end because it's kind of tying everything all together. I typically save my color work for late or probably most often at the end of my edit. In this case, it is at the end. This will be the last thing that I do. And I want to use calibration because it's very subtle, but it has a huge impact on the overall look of the photo. I did a video about color calibration in Lightroom, which you can check out there if you'd like to. It's an incredibly powerful tool, and it just does things that I think you just may not be able to do in other color tools. And it just it's subtle and just powerful. So I'm not going to explain it all here in terms of how it works, but the short version is there's red, green, and blue in every single pixel in the photo, and so these are adjusting those color values at the pixel level. Again, check out that other video if you want to go into a little bit more detail, but it's a great way to get a beautiful pop of color in your photo, and I think it just works so well on this one. And so I was pretty happy when I started playing with the calibration here and came up with what I came up with, which I'm about to get to. I don't always use all three of those in a single edit, but in this time I did, and it just kind of works out. So I'm going negative about a 13 on the blue primary, but I'm going to increase that saturation, and I go to about a 60. So overall, it's fairly saturated. It's really kind of popping, but if you look at the before the color calibration, you can see it's a lot more muted, so less colorful, less impactful and everything, even with the masks in place where I brighten things or added clarity and texture and all that, it's still fairly muted, and then calibration comes in at the end and it really pops that color. Now that might be a little bit saturated for some of you, which is fine. You can always pull these down to adjust accordingly if you feel like there's too much of one color or another, but I do feel like the colors tie together really nicely. By the way, you can always go into into HSL, and you could say, all right, well, I'm going to pull down the saturation of the blues a little bit if you want to, just to pull back a little bit of that. I kind of like my big colors, but feel free to control it to your own taste. But that's my edit, my friends, and that's how I'm using Lightroom. If you look at the before photo, I mean, if you can get past all the visual dust spots, which were all over my sensor, but that's the before. A lot flatter. It's really green, gray overall, just no pop. The light's not looking good. There's no real contrast. It's just kind of dark. And after, I mean, we've got nice contrast. We've got nice texture and clarity and all that kind of man-made stuff. We've got nice smoothness in the water. The sky looks good and yet dramatic. I think the light really pops. That's how I'm using masks as well as color calibration to really make a photo pop. If there are other videos about Lightroom you'd like to see me cover, just leave a comment down below. I've got some other ones planned around some of these other masking tools and how I'm using those. So I'll be back soon with that stuff. Thanks for watching, my friends. I appreciate it. I hope this gives you some ideas, and I'll see you in the next video. And until next time, adios.